Hello, it's Sam with Spieler Custom Baits, and today we're going to be tying in some white crappie jigs. I'm going to start off with a 1/16 ounce number 4 sickle hook jig. And what we're going to do is we're going to add just a little bit of adhesive to the shank just to get a good tie-in on the initial string. I'm going to be using 120 denier thread, white. I needed a few of these for a upcoming fishing trip. I noticed that I didn't have any crappie jigs that had a white profile to them. But what we're going to do is we're going to start by tying in this thread, going all the way down to the shank to the hook bend, and bringing it all the way back up to the head of the jig. Then we're going to clip off this tag end, and we're going to be using white marabou tips for this. I already had some from earlier from when I was making marabou jigs for smallmouth. And we're just going to bring that thread down a little bit so that we have a little bit of tie-in room. And we're going to tie in enough tips to make a full tail on these. So start with a few wraps and then lock that in and bring it back up towards the jig head, and we're going to cut off this excess. And we're going to repeat this process a couple of times until we get the fullness that we want on the jig tail. And again, a couple wraps, lock it in, down and back, cutting off the excess. And I like to use the tips of the marabou for my crappie jigs, just because it gives it a straight profile on those tails. I've used both kinds of marabou just depending on the jig type, whether I want to use the actual fluff marabou or the tips. For this jig style, I want to use the straight edged filament. And we're going to add another one in here. Just tying that right in. And bringing it back up towards the jig head. And we will cut off that excess as well. Just checking the tail, making sure that it's placed where I want it, that it's as full as I want it. And we're going to clean this up towards the jig head just to get all that loose fiber. And we're going to be using a white Chanel with a crystal flash. I'm not going to use any flash on these jigs, so I want to have a little bit of an eye catcher. So sometimes it's good just to use the Chanels that already have flash tied into them. And we're going to do nice even wraps up and over to create the body of this jig. And a couple wraps on either side just to get a good lock. And we're going to snip that. And then we're going to clean that up with a couple more wraps around the jig head. Creating a collar. and tying in that chenille at the same time. Now we're going to go for our standard whip finish. I always whip finish twice just to make sure that there's 2 knots holding that jig head in place. And we're going to snip that thread. And add a little bit of adhesive around the collar just to make sure that those threads are locked in. Throwing a little bit on the top of the jig just to keep the paint in. Alright, now we're going to get a close-up of our finished product. As you can see, a nice bushy tail. Mix kind of like that white curly tail grub or minnow look. And we're going to just repeat that process as many times as we need until we get the ones we like. Thank you guys for watching.